All right, so for this game, looks like we have just a straight sequencing game. We have what looks like 6 elements and 6 positions to put them into. So we'll set it up accordingly. And the elements themselves are G, H, J, L, M, and P. So from there, I guess let's jump straight into the rule. So the first rule tells us that L and M both have to go before H. So we can set that up accordingly. L and M are both before H. Next, we are told that L and P are going to go before J. Now, we've already got the L on the board that we can work off of. So essentially, both L and P are going to have to go before J. So that connects nicely. Next, we are told that if M is before P, then H is going to go before G. Now, that's going to interrelate into this, but let's just set that up as a separate rule for a moment. So we can say that if we have M before P, then we're going to have H before G. So contrapose, that would translate into saying that if we don't have H before G, or in other words, if G is before H, then we're going to have P before M. Now, we could arguably translate this into 2 possibilities for what could happen with all of this. Essentially, we could say that either we're going to trigger this rule or we're not. Now, if we trigger this rule, then we would have M before P, and that would ensure that we have to have H before G. And alternatively, if we don't have M before P, then we're going to have the P before M, but then we wouldn't really be able to say anything about H and G. That would be left ambiguous. G could still go either way, because if we don't trigger the rule, that doesn't actually tell us much. But that is something that we can kind of exhaust off board, because there would be kind of 2 major templates of these elastic bands and how this can work. But before we do that, let's just kind of finish off. We have G cannot go last. So I guess G simply cannot go into position 6. And of course, G is the one person that we don't know much about here. So you know what? Yeah, let's use this rule to kind of split our possibilities into 2 major boards. So we can say either we're going to have M before P. So if we do, then this will adjust. We're going to end up with, this is going to get a little messy, but we can say we're going to have M before P. We already know that P is before J. L is also before J. L is also before H, and we know that M is generally going to have to go before H, so I guess we can kind of extend this out. M is going to have to go before the H. And if we do this, then we also know that H is going to have to go before G, right? Because in this scenario, if M before P, then H is going to have to go before G. Now, we can actually take a step further, because we know that this G cannot go last. So in this scenario, oh yeah, the only person who could go last would be J. So that would actually lock the J into position number 6, although the rest would be a little bit flexible, because the 5th position could then be one of potentially P. It could be a G as well. We have a little bit of maneuverability there. Alternatively, though, we could have gone the other way and had M not before P, or in other words, P before M. So if we went down that path, then we can say that if we have P before M, then we know that P is still before the J, L is still before the J, L is still before the H, and so this is going to get a bit messy, because H is supposed to go after M. We still have this restriction to maintain, right? So I guess what we can do is we can move the H a little bit further down. So we can say that M is going to go before H, and then L would also go before H. And it might be worth kind of recognizing that this is a bit messy, but J can still shift further down. There's no real limitation on J, so I'll just leave this kind of as an opening here. Now, it's worth noting that in this situation, we don't actually know what happens to G. So G is still flexible, except for the fact that obviously G can't go into 6. So essentially at this stage, this entire game, we can say this is kind of a pseudo-exhaustion in the sense that one of these 2 webs is going to have to be in play, right? There's only 2 major possibilities for what could happen. And in general, for the record, it's also worth noting that in terms of the first and last positions, since G can't go 6, H and J are really the only ones. So globally speaking, right, you'll notice that the only other people that are left that could go last are H and J. That might be worth recognizing over here. The first position is a little bit more flexible. It could be any one of these three, P, L, or M, or even G if we're in this template set. So from there, you know what, let's see what we can do. The questions themselves. Number 7, which of the following could be the order first to last? So let's go by the rules. First rule, L and M are before H. So going through the answer choices, A is good, B is good, C is not. We have L after H, which doesn't work, so that's out. And then D, L and M before H, L and M before H, we're good with D and E. Next, we are told that L and P are before J. So once again, A has P after J. That doesn't work, so we can get rid of answer choice A. Answer choice B has L and P before J. That's fine. D has L and P before J. That's fine. And E does as well. Next, if we have M before P, so let's look for those cases. We're just down to B, D, and E. So answer choice B, we have M before P, and as a result, we're supposed to have H before G, which we don't. We have H after G, so we can get rid of answer choice B. Next, answer choice D has M after P, and E does as well, so those rules just don't apply right now. And the last rule is that G cannot go last. That would get rid of answer choice D and leave us with E as the best answer choice for question number 7. And I suppose, as usual, let's just plug that in. So we have PML, and then we've got JGH. So from there, let's take a look at the local questions. So number 10 is our first local, which says, if J is before M. So if we have J before M, let's line that up. Let's take a look at our template. So we know that this is not an option, because if J is before M, then we can't have J after M, right? So that means that we're going to be in this template. So what's going to happen here, we know J is going to go before M, M is going to still go before H, so we can add that on to our chain here. And we know that P and L still have to go before the J, so that much is still true. And G, I guess we don't, well, wait a minute, we know that G can't go last, right? So if G cannot go last, that now means that H is going to have to, because H is essentially after everything else. So we're going to have H in 6. Now from that point, though, G is going to be able to shuffle everything, right? So you could have G in 5 in between M and H, or between these guys, or really anywhere virtually. So from here, we're a bit more flexible. The question asks, which of the following could be the order in which the other 4 actors would appear? The other 4 being other than J and M. Well, I guess one easy pickup is we know H would have to be last of the other 4. So there we go. Answer choice A immediately becomes correct, because that's the only one that has H in the last position. Next local question is number 11. So we have, if L is immediately before G, so we're going to have essentially an LG block for this one. Now, I suppose, first of all, if we have an LG block, this is out of the question, right? Because we can't have L before H before G anymore. So we're going to be in this template for this question. Now, to be honest, it doesn't really change very much, does it? Because if we have an LG block, everything else really remains the same. We're just going to have a G right here after the L. So L is still going to have to go before the J. The LG block will go before the J and before the H. So you know what? Let's just kind of work off of this and just keep in mind mentally that we're going to have a G right after that L. So the question asks, what now must be true? Answer choice A, G is no later than 3rd. So does it have to be true that G is no later than 3rd? Well, if we have an LG block, we still have to have the G before the J and before the H, but couldn't that still allow you to have L and G in here in 3 and 4 with G in 4, and then the J and H could go into 5 and 6 one way or the other? And yeah, that seems okay, so I don't see why that has to be true. B, H is last, and we don't really have certainty on where anybody goes right now, so that doesn't seem like it has to be true. C, L is no later than 3rd. And oh yeah, that would have to be true based on what we just did with G, because if we have an LG block, we're going to have an L followed by a G, and then you still have to have a J, and you still have to have an H. So after the L, you would have to have 3 different people, which means the latest that L can go would have been the 3rd position to accommodate the 3 people after him. So that must be true. L is no later than 3rd. Best answer to question 11 is C. Next, number 12. If M is first, I suppose we can just use this row. So if we have M in the 1st position, let's see, what does that tell us? Well, right away, this template is out of the question now because M would have to go after P. So we are in this template. Now, if we have M in first there, well, we know that J is already 6. That's permanent. That much is true. And from there, I suppose P can really shuffle everything, couldn't he? Because there's no real restriction on P relative to all of these other guys. We just know that P is somewhere between M and J, which is anywhere here. So it doesn't seem like we can go any further. We just have to keep in mind that we're basically in this template right now. So the question asks, which of the following has to be true? G5, and we don't have certainty on anybody except for these guys right now, so that doesn't have to be true. H3, again, we don't know what exactly happens in the middle. J6, there it is. J definitely has to go 6. Best answer for number 12 is C. Next, back to the globals. Number 8, which of the following cannot be true? I guess let's take a look. Answer choice A, H before G, and, well, no, that kind of happens here, doesn't it? So I don't see why that can't be true. Answer choice B, H is in 6, and we've seen that happen several times, so that easily could happen. Answer choice C, L is in 5. And, oh, no, that's not going to work, because in either template you look, here L is before a whole bunch of people, so there's no way to have L in 5. But even here, L is before the J and before the H, so it couldn't go into position 5. Either way you go, L cannot go 5th. Best answer to number 8 is C. For the record, though, just in case, let's take a look at the rest. D, could we have P before M? And yeah, in this template, that certainly works. So there's no reason for that not to be possible. And E, P goes 2nd. And yeah, in fact, in this scenario, we said we could have had P virtually anywhere. So P could have gone 2nd. You could have had M immediately followed by P. So that could have happened. Best answer, once again, is C. Lastly, question number 9. Exactly how many of the actors are there, any of which could go in 6? Well, historically, we've seen, actually, we already know the answer. H or J can go into 6. Those are the only guys that can go into 6, because as we said, P, L, and M definitely cannot go 6. And we know that G cannot go 6. So that really just leaves you with H or J. The best answer here to number 9 is D.